Hello again, and welcome back to the part 3 of the Temple series. So far, we've gone in here and we've built our base, the stairs, the separate platforms. And then the last video, we went through and we built these modular columns and also these two fountains on here. One thing I didn't mention in the last video that you probably saw in here is I did go in and I actually cut in a 1x1 grid over the whole thing. That way it is because I want to make this playable in a campaign that I'm in. So we're going to go through this and start painting. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to take, as many of you have seen before, basically some Mod Podge. And as you can tell on the side, I've mixed in a whole bunch of black paint. You've probably seen this on Black Magic Craft. You know, it'll dry black and it'll basically seal and prime this whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and start with these columns, which I will leave separate. That way they're modular and can be used many times. So let's get painting. All right, so the first thing I'm going to paint are these columns. And one thing to remember is you don't want to make it too thick or you'll lose all of your different textures. So as I go through here, you'll see spots that are thick, but I always go back and I take that paint and I spread it everywhere else. So let's get this one painted and see what it should look like after we're done. I like to go back here at the end and just kind of make sure I have one even coat over the whole thing. And then I'll set it down and I'll quickly just get the top. Don't worry if the paint looks a little splotchy here. As we do the next few coats, this will kind of go away. All right, now that I have all the columns painted, the next thing is going to be to paint the big guy here. So this might take just a little bit of time, but basically just start at the top and start painting. All right, everything's dry and we're ready for the next step. So the next thing I like to do to get this to be truly black, because as you can see, the green is kind of showing through. You could either do another layer with your Mod Podge, or I really like to use these really cheap paints. So here's one, cream coat charcoal color. I get these at just any local craft store. Pretty much, well, actually every color that I'll use to paint this, I just get at craft stores. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint this and I'll come right back. All right, we're back. We now have a dried temple here with a dried charcoal color covering 100% of everything. The big thing is, as you do it, you want to make sure that all your various textures are still showing. And to do that, just make sure you don't put it on too thick. The next color we're going to use to sort of simulate like a stone look is going to be this Cream Coat Midnight Blue. This color may seem kind of odd for stone, but I picked it up by watching Bard's Craft. It actually very much helps as you put the top layers on for like a cooler, deeper stone look. So I'll be back in just a second for that. All right, now that our blue paint, as you can see on here, has dried, we are now ready to start with kind of all the different colors that are going to build up our stone. So just to give you an idea of what I'm going to put on here, first I'm going to start with I think they call it an overcoat of this Hippo Gray. And basically what I'll do is I'll go over this and cover almost everything, but you'll still want, you know, the blue to show through. And then I'll probably go over it with two different things. So I'll dry brush with this gray, which is sort of like a light gray. This is a Craftsmart gray over it. And then I'll also dry brush with a little bit of burnt sienna. And the reason for that is, you know, rocks, they have all kinds, or stone is just all kinds of different colors mixed together. So I'll use these, and the red, you'll see when we do it, or the burnt sienna, we will do that more patchy kind of all over, not consistent over the whole top. That way you get just kind of some different red highlights and stuff in there. Then what I'll do is I'll do a full dry brush of tan, antique white, and then a very, very, very light coat of this white here. It's kind of a bright white. So let's get started. First, we're gonna do our Hippo Gray, and I'll try to show you on a column this whole process. That way we can just kind of repeat it over the rest of the design. Ooh, I'm getting pretty low, but luckily I have this other bottle right here. Okay, so one thing that's pretty important to have, you're going to want a chunk of cardboard. And you're going to basically get your brush saturated. And then you're just going to kind of get a little bit off on here. And then you're just going to kind of brush some dark gray on there. And again, you don't want to cover all of the blue. You want it to be able to show through, because this is where the colors start to kind of pile on top of each other and look pretty good. And you can do different amounts to kind of give different effects, but as you can see here, basically I got my dark gray on there and the blue's showing through. And I'll just do a little on the top. Okay, and I'm just going to go through and do a few more of these columns and let that one dry, and then we'll come back and we'll do the next part. Now's a good time too. If you're interested in any of my tools, in the link below, you'll find links to my Etsy store and my Facebook page. And also, if you want to kind of help support the channel, you know, feel free to, you know, smash the like button down below or subscribe to see any videos that, you know, I'll put out in the future. All right, we're gonna overbrush the full big part now. Now that we have our dark gray overcoat on top of the blue, what we're going to do is we're going to start doing some dry brushing. So first thing we do is use this color gray right here. We just use some Craft Smart gray. Any light gray will really work for you. One thing that's kind of important to try to do if you want all your pieces to kind of look the same is to just kind of remember the same colors that you use and try to use those over and over. Now with dry brushing, you want to try to use this cardboard, and then I like to use my hand until I can barely see any paint. And then I just kind of go on here and I start getting it as light gray as I want. And remember, we're going to do a wash at the end. So the nice thing is even if there's a lot of light, the paints will dry more dark, and then the wash will help kind of knock that down. So don't be afraid if it looks a little kind of cartoony, if you will, right now. All right, so I did kind of the first one, and you'll see is you can see there's a bit of a difference here between the lighter gray and the darker gray. Now I'm just going to go through and do that to all of them. Okay, so you're going to see here we got the whole item dry brushed with the light gray, and now we're going to do my absolute favorite one. So we're going to use burnt sienna, which is basically a little bit of a red color. And when you do this, you just want to make sure that it's not like the gray where we put it everywhere. We basically, and I don't have any paint in my brush, you're going to want to put it like in varying spots, because if you look at like stone, it doesn't have it, everywhere, but you'll see different streaks of color throughout stone. So with the burnt sienna here, we're going to just, again, wipe it till there's almost none on the brush. And then we're just going to kind of come in here and add some various patches of red all over. And this one's pretty quick, so we'll go from this one right on to the next color. And don't be afraid if it's a little bright, because the nice thing is when we do a wash at the end, a lot of this will dull down and you won't see it, but the red really adds a kind of a really cool element, I think, to the stone itself. Some areas you can make quite dark and some you can make lighter. And so we'll let that kind of dry. I'm going to go through and just kind of hit these columns with a bit. You'll see just here's kind of a more close-up of what we're looking at. So we'll just kind of go through and hit the rest of them. Now that we've got some red on here, or burnt sienna, I should say, we are going to go back and we're going to go and just do a dry brush of just basic tan. And then I'm going to go over that with antique white here. And then the last one that we're going to do is, this is more like a bright white color. And this one we're going to do very sparingly. So I'm just going to go through real quick and we'll follow up after each color, but that's what we're going to do. All right, there we go. So we got a nice layer of tan on there. Now this is going to look pretty vibrant right now. But remember, what's really going to help us in the end here is going to be the wash. It's going to really kind of subtle this all up and put all the colors together. So again, as I mentioned before, the next color I'm going to use is antique white. This one I'll just put a little less on compared to the tan that you see there. So let's get started. this dry brushing is going to be bright white. So basically with this, you're gonna see that we want to get almost all of the white paint off the brush. So you can just do it on your arm until you barely see anything. And with this, it's just quick, flat strokes, like so. And this will just put a nice top highlight on top of all these items. And this is probably the fastest layer as we go over. And you'll see as the brush gets drier, you can kind of go more vigorous with this white. So basically, let's go ahead and we'll do this. And then the important thing is you need to let this layer of paint dry all the way before we do any washes. So we're gonna do this. We'll come back and actually, there's gonna be a couple other paints that we use really fast just because we're gonna maybe make the bottom of our fountains, you know, maybe like there's a little bit of green in there to kind of show that there's been water. And so we'll come back, we'll do that, and then we're gonna let this whole thing dry and we will apply a nice wash. All right, I have two final colors here. Burnt umber, which is like a brown, and this dark foliage green. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put those basically just in the bottom of the fountains. And so I'll start with the burnt umber. Put a very teeny bit, oop, that paint's getting kind of old. Very teeny bit in there. And then with the green, I'll do the same thing. I'll put some over here. Super small amount. And we'll just use the same brush we've been using. And we'll go right in here with the brown. So I'll get a little off of there. And now we just want to be careful so that we're only getting it in the bottom of the fountain itself. I kind of just like to push the brush down and mush it around like so. And it might turn a little bit more white just because of what we got in here. We just did a bunch of dry brushing, but that's okay. So you got a little brown there. And we'll come back, just kind of wipe our brush off. Get the green. And we'll just kind of mix it with the brown a bit. Not doing full coverage, just get a little bit in there to let the brown still kind of show through, you know, but make it sort of a brownish, greeny color. This one on this side, I need a little bit more brown. Okay, we'll just sort of mix them together because, you know, the bottom of fountains and stuff over time with sitting water just get kind of, honestly, a little gross looking. So that's all we're really aiming. Okay, so now everything is dried. And the last thing to do is to apply a wash. So I made my own wash here. It's just a black wash. You can check out online. There's lots and lots of places, but basically I use if you search Tabletop Witchcraft Basic Black Wash, that's what I use. And so basically we're just gonna pour it on here. Just put a bunch on top and let's just start spreading it out. Let it drip down kind of normally. And we'll go from there. And you want this just to get on everything. All of our wash is now dry, and we're looking pretty dang good. So the only thing left to do is going to be to add some water in these fountains. And to do that, we're going to use this right here. So it's just some Gorilla Epoxy Clear. I've seen online people use dollar store epoxy. Really, all you need is any sort of epoxy that turns clear. All right, so it's really important with this is we don't have a ton of time to work with it because it is 5-minute epoxy. So what we're gonna do is maybe not use the whole tube since we have 2 fountains. We'll just do one. So we'll just put in about a little less than half because the circle one is a little smaller. And what's important is that we mix this very thoroughly. But also remember that you only have 5 minutes. So that's the only downside to this. Using this is that you have to work very quickly. And it's hard to not get any bubbles. So as you're mixing, make sure to scrape all the sides of your cup and the bottom. All right, so now I'm just gonna go pour it in over here. And we'll come back, take a look after I got it in. And so once you get it in there, you just want to kind of spread it around. So I'll pick this up so we can take a look here. So I'm just kind of making sure it gets all the way under there, but all these little stringers coming off the top, you just want to make sure it does not get on anything. All right, so I'm going to go do the other side now. All right, so one thing that maybe it's hard to see, but I got a nice level in here. You can see the shine coming off the top. And let's take a look over at this one too. I ended up adding a little bit more into this one for some height. Now we're just going to let it dry. And one thing that's really important when you're letting this dry is put something over the top so no dust in the area can fall on it either, because I'll tell you, dust is everywhere, even though you don't think it is. So, all right, we'll be back in a minute with the final results.